Hello, folks. Welcome to Rational Science, directly from Frankfurt, Germany, and the only site on the internet that does physics. Right. Everybody else does mathematics, which is the movement of concepts. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that tonight over here. But before, I've got a couple of announcements. The first one's not really an announcement, it's more like a clarification. And it comes at the heels of a comment someone made. So let me put that up there. Okay, this is what the fellow said. He said, I have this thing when the owner of a channel never bothers to reply to any comment. It's a huge lack of respect. Uh-huh. And another fellow answers him and says, why did you delete all your comments over a 2-day period of debate? And the fellow answers, he says, I deleted it because I had the intention of leaving this channel for good until I saw this other guy's comment, which I replied to. And since nothing I can say seems to make a difference in your thinking, well, why leave all that debate there for nothing? Well, I think that's what is a lack of respect, deleting comments. People who do not want to stand by their arguments, I guess they feel ashamed of them. I have no idea why they would not leave a comment behind. And that's the main reason I don't answer questions directly in my site, okay? And it is because, when I started what is it, like 10 years ago, a little over 10 years, 15 years more likely, I engaged in a lot of discussions. I mean, my first 20 videos, if you look at them today, I still have the comments there. I just wiped out the comment. In other words, the comments are there, but I just don't let people see those comments, don't let people add comments. And if you see those comments, I'm probably the guy that's got the most comments on the internet. For such a small site, I've got tons of comments. And I'm not talking about one-liners. I'm talking about full paragraphs where people really carried on discussions. And what a lot of people would do after they engage, we have new theory here. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of dissent, and we expect that. But what a lot of these people did was they deleted their comments. Or a lot of them just used fake names and then deleted the names. And you ended up answering, if you look at the series of comments today, you're answering to people who are not there anymore. And all that you can see is your own comments. And so, I think that's a lousy thing to do. And so because of that, I don't answer any more questions on YouTube. What I do is I have a session here at the end of each video in which I answer questions that people ask throughout the week. So I do answer questions, and it gives me more time to look at the questions, and some of them I have to research, and so I can give them a proper answer. But, I'm not going to answer to someone, especially like this fellow, who the next thing he does is delete his comments or run away. That is, I think such people should be banned from the internet. That's my position on that. And so, no, I'm not going to answer directly in Yahoo unless in YouTube. I mean, unless there is a question of policy. Okay, and again, like this one, this is a question of policy of how I handle these things. So no, I don't skirt questions, and I don't care if you come here and cuss my mother. I really don't care. I'm not going to delete your comment. I'm not going to mess with your comment. Sometimes YouTube deletes comments because they don't like URLs being put in there. I have no idea what their policy is, but I never touch a comment. So you don't have to worry about that from me. If I see, and again, you can say whatever you want. If I see something in there that I believe it needs addressing, then I'll bring it up and I'll, discuss it online. And then once a month we have live shows, where you can ask questions directly. People have a million questions. I can't address them all. Please understand that. I try to look through there and see if there's something that, that's interesting, and that's what I'll discuss. Okay. So the announcements, one is that I'm going to be on the road for the next couple weeks. And so the next lecture will probably be next Sunday. Okay, and I'm gonna do my best to be here on Sunday. And on this channel, I mean, not here in Frankfurt. I'll probably be somewhere else. The other one is that Hans, my son, he's coming at the end of the month. He's was sent on a secret mission, a damsel in distress that he rescued, I guess, or is about to rescue. And so I'm happy to get him back in at the beginning of June, probably. And then for those of you who asked about the lawsuit, yeah, we're in court now, and we're suing these mathematical biophysicists. Okay, and yeah, we're in court. We're probably gonna be there for a while, and the issue there is that these people, these biophysicists, they copied not only the rope model and started to make money with it, but they also copied the definitions, something we're going to talk about today. And you know, those definitions are copyrighted in the Why God Doesn't Exist, first book I wrote on the subject. And you know, if you want to follow up on the lawsuit itself, on the case, I posted a thread on the rational scientific method in Facebook, so you can find it there. Okay, and so yeah, those interested can in the subject can, you know, go to that rational scientific method and they'll find out more about it. Okay, so what is it that, you know, that I'm defending in that lawsuit and also here, because you know I talk about this quite often, and which is also the subject of today in great measure. And these are the words what I put in that book were the foundations of physics. You cannot do physics unless you define these words, at least these words. There's some more, but these I guess are the main ones. And so yes, you need to define these words in order to give a physical interpretation to a phenomenon. Okay, and the main one is that word there, the word object. And like I say, the definition of the word object destroys all religions. Once you define the word object, all religions have to go. All religions are based on spirits, on concepts, and we can't use those to give a physical interpretation to any phenomenon. And so that's the key issue. Okay. Um, here, here we have. Give me a second here. Here's the pictorial representation of those words. Okay. You have the object, which is that which has shape there. You have a cat and a dog, those have shape. Distance, separation between objects. Location is the set of distances from one object to all the rest. And that also plays into the word exist, because in order for you to exist, you have to have location. You have to be an object and you have to have location, meaning you have to have a set of distances with all objects in the universe. If God wants to exist, all he's got to do is meet the definition of the word exist. And then he exists by definition, period. Okay, it's got nothing to do with belief or anything else. Motion, it's two or more locations of one object. Okay, so if you take two or more steps, you have essentially motion. And time, we don't use the word time in science, but we define it for the mathematicians so they know what they've been talking about these last 2,500 years. And time is a comparison of two motions, and it requires memory. What is space? Well, space is the opposite of an object. Okay, a thing is the opposite of nothing, and space is that which doesn't have shape. It's exactly the opposite of an object. So we have these definitions, and once you have those definitions, you are able to communicate your theory to another human being in a rational manner, so they can follow, you know, your arguments, your theory, okay, your explanation. Okay, what are the forbidden words? Words that we cannot use in physics. These are used in mathemagics, as we call it, a religion that attempts to merge physics with mathematics, an impossible task. It's impossible. You can't. Math has nothing to do with physics. Physics has nothing to do with math. But these people are called mathematical physicists, and we call them mathematicians because they end up doing everything by magic. What is magic? Black magic? The movement of concepts. It's okay to move, spirits because you can at least, or a ghost because, I mean, if you painted like Casper the Friendly Ghost, at least you can see something. You say, well, it's this flying, bed sheet. Okay, with two eyes and a nose and a mouth. So we can all deal with the bed sheets because we say, okay, that's the spirit. Okay, fine, it's got superpowers, goes through walls, etc. No problem there. But when you start moving concepts around, ooh, that's scary. I mean, you need a lot of beers in order to do that. When you start moving intelligence around and love and, energy and, fields, then you're in trouble. And so some of these words are not allowed in physics, okay, and they're widely used in mathematics. And people learn them by rote in high school, in at the monasteries, okay, as we say, okay. And here they are. These are some of the ones that are forbidden. Okay, it's words like energy, field, time, wave, and mass, plasma. You have the people at the electric universe. They're fanatics of the word plasma. A lot of them also adhere to the ether. Okay, charge. What is charge? Force. They use force as a physical object. They said the force. May the force go with you. Orbital, they treat as a physical object. Infinity, they think that infinity is something. So they say, oh, I went to infinity, like, over there. The vortex, another famous words of the electric universe. A lot of them like the word vortex. They think it's this tornado is a thing, okay? Point, line, and obviously we do not use numbers in science, not at all, not one bit. Anyone doing math has nothing to do with science or with physics. We have no use for numbers, okay? And so we typically call them idiots. An idiot is an individual with very, very big ideas. It comes from the Middle Klingon, meaning big idea, okay? Like idiot, okay? It's not just a little idea, it's an idiot, okay? So we call them idiots. None of those words are allowed in science. None of those words are allowed in physics. And they're not allowed because, first of all, they're quantitative, meaning they're going to describe, and we have no use for description. Science is interested in explanations. That's where you have to break your brain. And no, explanations are not made of descriptions. Okay, we have a different issue with explanation. I've discussed it in the past, and there's also a video out there so you can look it up. Anyways, the other thing that we don't use are some of the activities that they do in mathematics. A lot of people think that these activities are pertinent to physics. They're not, okay? And here they are. These are the forbidden activities and processes. We don't count. We have no use for counting, okay? Number, no use for that at all. We do not do predictions. That's astrology, palm reading, and who knows what, but certainly not part of science. We have no use for predictions. We do not observe. We do not gawk. Okay, you can observe all day and not understand anything, so observation is not part of science or of physics, and we always remove the witness. We do it mafia style. We kill the witness. And that's part of the problem with observe, that a lot of people say, I observed in the lab. Well, maybe you just inferred, thinking that you observed. And we don't measure anything. We have no use for measurement. We have no use for experiments. Okay? You can do all the experiments you want at home in your own basement. Okay? And when you come to conference, we want you to explain what you understood, what you got out of it. But to do an experiment, we don't allow you to do experiments at the conference, okay? Like Michael Faraday used to do experiments in front of people with magnets and electricity and so on. That's not science. That's voodoo. That's magic, magician. We do not falsify. It's really illegal to falsify things as far as I know, so we do not falsify anything. They say that in mathematics that they falsify theories. We have no idea what that is, especially when falsify means that it's your opinion. and opinions belong to religion. So whenever you falsify or truthify, you convert something, prove and turn something into truth. None of that has anything to do with science. That's got to do with your beliefs and with religion. Because we don't experiment, we don't test anything, we don't verify anything. We don't verify it. You can verify all of what you want at home in your own dark basement. But in science, we do not verify anything because that has to do again with belief. We do not prove, we do not use. Use has to do with technology. Okay? And science is different with than technology. A lot of people confuse the notions of technology with science. They think it's the same. In fact, you'll find many of the headings, like in YouTube and so on, they say science and technology. And so a lot of people, confuse these. Authorized. We have no authorities in science, in physics. No one is an authority. So if you got your PhD and you say, well, I got authority because, I studied all this 10 years and now I got my PhD, it's worthless. Sorry, it has no value. You could have studied divinity studies for all we know. Works. If it works or not, that's like use. That's got to do with technology. We don't care if it works or not. We want to make sure that we understand the theory and that we can crunch it and, figure out whether each individual has to figure out whether they like the theory or not. And we do not do repeatable experiments again because, it's nonsense again. You can repeat all you want the experiment. Throw the pencil as many times as you want until you figure out that it always falls to the floor. No problem there. When you come to the conference, we need for you to explain why, what causes that pencil to fall to the floor. We do not describe, we explain, and we do not vote for theories. Okay? There is no voting, there's no democracy in science. Okay? You can believe whatever you want. Okay? Voting, again, is an opinion. So you vote, you raise your hand and say, I vote for that theory. Great. The other guy votes for another theory. So what have we learned? So we don't care about any of that. In science, we need to understand the theory. That's where science stops and religion begins. Okay? Religion begins when you start giving opinions of what's true or false, what's correct and incorrect. That's when we get into religion. And people emphasize a lot of that and say, oh, I need evidence, I need proof. You're in the wrong place. Science doesn't offer evidence or proof. Science offers theory, explanations of mechanisms so that you understand it. Then you reach your own conclusion, in private. That's your problem. Okay, that's the way it works. So how did we end up with all these words of mathematics? Well, for that we have to, even though you may not believe me, we have to go to the Bible, and the Bible, was given to man by God. Okay, here he is. This is when it happened. Okay, God gave the Bible to man, and in the Bible you're going to find a little story, and it's the story of Babel. The Tower of Babel, and that's where babbling comes from, I think. What happened was that God, in his wise wisdom, he didn't want man to, reach his heaven while he was alive. While he after death, maybe your soul goes to heaven, but when you're alive, we don't want you reaching to the heavens. Maybe they didn't. Maybe God didn't want anyone to see him in his knickers. I don't know. And so the issue is that apparently God has something against people building buildings to high levels. And so here you see a little bit of that story. Okay, I'll set it in motion here. And you see how this tower is called the Tower of Babel, is growing, and it grows all the way to to the sky. And so God didn't like that. So what God did was he started to confuse people. He started to create languages so they would not be able to. Oh, sorry. So they would not be able to. Let me put myself back in here. Give me a second here. So they would not be able to talk to each other. And so that's how languages were created according to the Bible. The Bible is given by God. I mean, you know, you got to believe that, right? It's a fact. And so we have all these languages today. But what a lot of people don't know is that it was the devil. The devil, that's not in the Bible, by the way. So don't look it up. The devil is the one who created the definitions that he gave to the mathematicians. Okay, the devil was a mean critter, and he said, "Hey, a sly guy," right? And he went in there and he started making all these definitions, putting them in dictionaries. Okay, and so what happened was people started reading these dictionaries, you know, and they walked around, they memorized a lot of the words that were in the dictionaries. And they created this language that nobody could understand because the guy who put them in there, who put those definitions in there, was the devil. Okay? And so today, what we have is all this language created by the mathematicians who created all this language that nobody understands. And here you see this is where it all ended up with. You know, a lot of people get bored with all the language that the mathematicians use, and they just go out and get sick of all this stuff. They're really, you know, upset that the mathematicians use this language that nobody understands. And what they do actually is, you know, use all these fancy words, and we're taught a lot of those by rote in high school, you know, like field and mass and so on. And, you know, a lot of people just drop out of the class, say, okay, thank God I'm over physics, mathematical physics, and I'll never see it again. And so later on in life, all they do is they just listen to these guys. They don't understand anything of what they're saying because they're talking about fields and energy and mass and all this stuff. And they say, well, I don't understand any of that. But you look like you're intelligent, that you know what you're talking about. You got all those equations that nobody understands, so you must be right. And so these people can tell them, you know, that time is warped, or that they shook the field, or that they transferred energy. And people say, okay, I think I understand you, you know. And that's all the devil. So God was the fellow who created, you know, the Bible, and He said, "I want everybody to read it," but nobody read it. Even to this day, nobody reads it. Everybody checks the dictionary because whenever they don't know something, they say, "Well, go to the dictionary." Where do they go? They go to the ordinary dictionary or to the ordinary encyclopedia, which essentially parrots the ordinary dictionary. And when they're there, it's the devil that takes over. He's the guy who put the words in there. He's the guy who's in charge of the dictionaries. A lot of people didn't know that. Okay, and so here it is. Okay, God is the author of the Bible, which no one reads anyway, right? And the devil is the creator of the definitions placed in dictionaries. That's how it all ended up. Okay, so I just wanted you to know the real story behind this. Okay, um, just so you know why we have all this language. See, God separated the languages, but within one language you would have people who, you know, understood that language. So that's when the devil came in, put all these fancy words in there, very sly, devious words that, you know, people use to communicate, thinking they're communicating when they're not. Okay, and of course one of those words is the word exist. Okay, that we're going to be dealing with today. And we're going to start with this fellow, and he essentially shows that, yeah, the devil put this word in the dictionary, okay, and didn't define it. People think they have a definition, they don't. And this is it. You see it here. An example again, yeah. Referring to me, he says, he uses the definition of atheist, which is proclaimed by theists and by atheists themselves, not by atheists themselves. Okay, and he says, atheism is an absence of belief in the evidence of deities. Okay, but then he says, I don't believe is different from I believe. Is it? And another fellow, I think he had the right answer, okay? And that's the answer, the correct answer as far as I'm concerned, okay? You believe that no God exists, but become scientifically hypocritical by calling it disbelief. Absolutely. Is disbelief a form of belief or not? Aha. I think he hit it right on the nose. This is exactly the thought that I had when I saw that. And I read this fellow's comment. I said, I'm going to put that one up there. Okay, and so here it is. This is my 5 cents worth on this, okay? And that's the absence of belief is or equal to disbelief. It's the same thing as belief. It's just a different type of belief. Not belief does not make it an antonym. A not belief is just another belief. Okay, and non-belief is just an opinion again, and that's religion. Religion, the definition of religion is opinion, belief. Okay, that's what it is. It's not God, it's not Jesus Christ or Mohammed. It's opinion and it's belief. And belief plays no role in science. So whenever an atheist says, I don't believe is different from I believe, well, all he's showing is that he's just a religious fanatic. That's all he's showing. And in science, we say something different. We say, let us assume that God exists. God can only be an assumption. It's in mathematics where a hypothesis is not an assumption. In mathematics, a hypothesis is a theory. And again, mathematics deals with fact and truth and proof and belief. Okay, and it turns out that existence has absolutely nothing to do with belief, or with disbelief, non-belief, any of those, skepticism. Science, mathematical physics believes that this is their rationale, and this is what they believe in. Okay, and so yeah, we try to separate mathematics from science, and the problem is that in mathematics they harp on belief. They call those proofs, truths, and evidence. All that has to do with belief. None of that has anything at all to do with science or especially with physics. Okay. So fella says, I think, yeah. I think it's the same fellow. He continues, says that that's meaning God, right? That's not a theory. Correct. Theory in science has to be testable and falsifiable. A theory has to be testable and falsifiable. No, not in science. If anything, in religion, because falsifiable means you're going to prove, you're going to try to convince someone to change his mind. You're working on the belief side of the equation, you can say, and that belongs strictly to religion. It has nothing to do with science. In science, we don't believe. In science, we explain so that someone understands, and that's objectively. Once you understood, we part companies. One goes to his church, the other guy to his church, and they believe whatever they want to believe. They can do research, they can do experiments, they can do whatever they want in their dark basements. When they come together again, explain. I want your explanation. What caused the spoon to fall to the floor? That's what I need to find out. You need to explain. And you say, well, I did 1,000,000 experiments. I did repeatability and I measured and I got all this equation. Yeah, so far you haven't explained anything. So no, we don't care about falsification because one guy falsifies the other guy's God. That's all we're doing with falsification. I don't like your God, so I falsified him. He's not truth to me. He's fake. And the other guy says exactly the same thing. In fact, you could be talking to a mirror for all you know. Okay, so he said, God isn't a theory, it's a hypothesis. But he says a hypothesis, but the question is whether this fellow understands what a hypothesis is, because the mathematicians, everybody out there considers a hypothesis a theory. It's a theory that's in its infancy, so to speak. So that's a theory nonetheless. That's not what a hypothesis is. Hypothesis is an assumption, okay, and that's got nothing to do with theory. Assumptions include the objects that you're going to use in your theory, the definitions, hopefully not from the devil, okay, from the ordinary dictionary or from the encyclopedias out there, especially those scientific ones, which essentially copy everything from the ordinary dictionary, especially the keywords that I mentioned earlier. And yes, what you need to do is define, and then the next thing you do, part of the hypothesis, is you make a statement of the facts. Nobody knows the facts. Only Mother Nature, Father Universe, God, the devil, those guys know it, but they have it in their file cabinets. But we have no access to the file cabinet. All we can do is make a statement of the facts, what we think happened. You know, someone might say, well, I was at the crime scene. I saw how this guy killed that woman. And everybody who came later on, we don't know what happened. We have to rely on his word. He said, it's a fact. I was here, I saw it. yeah, I don't believe you. You're lying. Period. I mean, it's just his opinion. We can't reproduce the fact again. Even if you filmed it, say that was staged. Like a lot of these Moonies say, everything's staged. So, facts are just beliefs. That's all they are. So we do not have facts in science. What we have is statements of the facts. We make an assumption that this is what happened, and on that assumption of that process, we build our theory and we say this is what caused it to happen. This is the physical interpretation of what happened for the purposes of physics, right? So he says, don't get confused like many do with what's called a theory in everyday language and what's a theory regarding to science. Don't play semantics. Yeah, I think this fellow is playing semantics because he doesn't understand what a theory is or what a hypothesis is. Okay, that's what we need to clarify. Okay, but getting back to the word belief, here we have two gentlemen. They did their best. They used their maximum brain power to come up with a definition for the word exist, and they never could. Why? Because they used the see-touch criteria. And when you use see-touch for either what a thing is, what an object is, and for the word exist, you're going to be wrong every time. You won't be able to use it consistently. Meaning that any definition of those two words that depends on see and touch is by definition irrational. And we're going to get to the definition of definitions, right? But the key issue here is the following. Here we have it. We have these two gentlemen. One is David Hume, and he says the following. This is in the 18th century. Okay, the idea of existence then is the very same with the idea of what we conceive to be existent. Okay, that idea, when conjoined with the idea of any object, makes no addition to it. So Hume was not able to tell the difference between an object and its existence. So he thought the word object and existence, in essence, were synonyms. He couldn't tell the difference. And a few years later, we have Kant, a German guy, and he came up with the same notion. He says, by whatever and however many predicates I may think a thing even in completely determining it, nothing really is added to it if I add that the thing exists. So these two gentlemen, they broke their heads and they called themselves philosophers, and they were none of the kind. They were just amateurs, not even philosophers. They didn't do philosophy. Philosophy is something else. So all these people like Kant and Hume, uh, they would be kicked out of philosophy, out of genuine philosophy. No, they had no idea, and the fact that they dealt with the word exist also shows that they're not philosophers, because the word exist belongs exclusively to physics. Physics is the science of existence. Physics deals with what exists. Physics tries to determine what exists out there, especially in our invisible world of Mother Nature and Father Universe, right? We're trying to figure out what exists out there, what is there, and that's causing all these phenomena, such as the spoon falling to the floor. If you're gonna try to explain that, you got to figure out what invisible things are out there first before you can give an explanation. Okay, it's no use saying, "Well, I measured the speed of the fall of the spoon, and I measured how much mass the spoon has, and blah blah blah." You go with all this stuff, and it fell with so much energy, and this was the field that was out there. You can go with all those numbers, and it's absolutely useless. You need to tell me what physical entity came in contact with a spoon. And if you say, well, I can't see or touch anything, well, maybe you're using the wrong definition for what an object is and what exists means. Okay, so that's where we have to start. Because if an object is not that which you can see or touch, if exist has nothing to do with see or touch, okay, then maybe what's there is an object, and again, it has nothing to do with being able to see it or touch it. You can't see the air for sure, so why would in anything made out of atoms hopefully is a thing, okay? So air is a thing, whether you like it or not. So we call it an object. And that sounds terrible in the ears of many people because they're bringing these notions from ordinary speech of what an object is in ordinary speech, in our everyday living. You know, we touch things, we see things, and we say, okay, an object like a table is what I can see and touch. And no, you can't use that definition in science. You can't use it in physics because, you know, I can imagine a table, and that table you cannot see or touch. And certainly you cannot touch the table that's on the other side of the universe, which is a table anyways. It's the one the Klingon is sitting on. You can't see or touch it. So does that mean that's not an object? Does the word table refer to an object? Does the word chair always refer to an object? So we have to divide every word in the dictionary between objects and concepts. Objects, those which have shape. Concepts, well, that's a little trickier, and that's I showed it at the beginning here real briefly, but it's a word that invokes two objects. You need to define the word object first before you define the word concept. Okay, and so as a consequence, these are the definitions we have of this word exist today, because people like Hume and Kant, you know, they were the ones who addressed it. Okay, they did the best they could. Okay, they did a lousy job, but they did the best they could, right? And this is what we have today. If you look it up, you know, you find these circular arguments or circular definitions. Objects see, touch, you know, that's the notion people have. Existence is also see, touch, that which you can see and touch. So today we have no difference still between object and existence. You get the common man out there, the layman, and he's going to say, yeah, an object is that which I can see and touch. That's probably what he's going to say. Others say it's a collection of matter, and they don't realize that a collection of whatever, first is a concept, but it's not an object, a collection of something, you know. But if you have a collection of matter, then your matter is already a collection of objects. That's what matter is. So all you're doing is having a circular definition. But then you have, you know, exist again. Does it exist? Well, there are objects that don't exist, and there are objects, and that's what people have trouble with. You know, you need location for it to exist. That's the difference between object and exist. Anyways, here you see the definition you'll find out there. You can look them up yourself. Existence, the fact or state of having objective reality. Wikipedia says existence, the ability of an entity to what? Interact, touch, see, touch, you know, with reality. Okay, what is reality? You look it up, exist. What is actuality? Exist. Existence, the state of or fact of existing. That's what you find in a dictionary. And then you also find exist, to have actual being. And you look at being, and it's the fact of existing. So we've learned a lot there, you know, a bunch of synonyms. So yeah, this was done by the devil. Keep that in mind, okay? So the devil working is putting his tail in here in the dictionary. So whenever you look for a word, a definition of a word, never go to the dictionary. Not if you're doing science. If you're going to do for ordinary talk, that's fine. But if you're doing science, if you're doing physics, there's only one way, and that's go back to your dark basement, you know, close all the doors, shut out the lights, get 2 beers, and think. You got to break your brains and think, what is the scientific definition? How can I use this word consistently? And once you do that, you have a set of powerful words that allow you to trash anyone, especially mathematicians, okay? Okay, so what do we have today as a result that nobody has defined the word exist? Well, we have the Three Stooges. We have the atheists, the deists, and the agnostics. And all these people talk about the belief in existence. Okay, here you have them. Okay, Mo says, I believe in existence. Larry says, I don't believe in existence. Oh, and Curly says, I don't know whether to believe in existence or not. Those are the Three Stooges of religion. Okay, and how do we do it in science? Well, we do it a little differently. Here it is. Okay, we say, let us assume so and so exists. Okay. So if you're going to talk about God, you say, let us assume God exists. Then you can use that assumption, that hypothesis, for anything you want. Okay? And what do you mean when you say, let us assume that God exists? You are saying that God has location. Okay, what does that mean? That means that God is first an object. He's got to be an object. And I'll say he, maybe it's a she. We can call it an it. We'll just use God, the word God. God has to be an object. If God is a concept like love or intelligence, concepts cannot be said to exist because exist belongs exclusively to physics. Physics deals with objects, not with concepts treated as objects. You know, you can't say God is love and then say God moved over the face of the waters, or you know, that kind of thing. Or you know, God is a field and it vibrates. You know, we don't accept that kind of thing. Now you can't sneak it in there. It's got to be an object, a genuine object. It's got to have shape, standalone shape. It's got to be a standalone object. Okay. And once you have that, yeah, no problem. Once you have an object, you can say it exists, or let us assume it exists. Let us assume this star over there in the universe exists. Okay, you can start like that, no problem at all. And then you tell your theory. Okay, what are you going to tell us about the star? What explanation are you going to give us? Okay. Okay, so what is the scientific definition of the word exist? Well, here we have it. Exist, physical presence. That's the correct definition. That's a scientific, not correct because you may not agree, but we don't care if you agree. The only way to challenge that is to come up with your own definition that comes up against it. What are we saying? That's an object that has location. So again, if God wants to exist, God has to have distance with respect to every object in the universe. There better be a straight line of direction from me to God. Okay? God can hide again in the 10th dimension, or I'm sorry, string theory, 26th dimension. He can hide in the 27th dimension for all I care. There's got to be a straight line of direction from me to him. He can't avoid it, no matter where he goes. Okay, so sorry, God. You want to exist, you got to have distance. Okay, that's the way it is. Separation. Okay, so we have these definitions, and here we see just a clarification of something. Okay, that a lot of people confuse science with materialism, physics with materialism, especially deists accuse many mathematical physicists saying, "Oh, you're a materialist." It turns out that they're not. You know, and here you see why. These definitions come from the Wikipedia. Materialism holds that the only things that exist are matter and energy. Well, we have no problem with matter. We say that objects that exist are matter, but we do have a big problem with energy. No such monster as energy, not in physics. It's a concept, and we cannot say that energy exists. So if that's the definition of materialism, okay, then it's not what we have in science, it's not what we have in physics. Okay, so materialism, under that notion, that definition, is divorced from physics. Okay, if they would have stopped at matter, that would have been okay. Okay, and the idealism holds that the only things that exist are thoughts and ideas. Well, obviously not under physics. We reject that. Thoughts and ideas are concepts, and concepts cannot be said to exist. Not in science, not in physics. You can say that at the church, you know, in your Sunday school, no problem. Scholasticism, existence of a thing is not derived from its essence, but is determined by the creative volition of God. My God. Yeah, they have all these notions out there, different people who believe different things. That's why I forget about facts. Fact is what you believe in. That's what it is. How do we say it? What is rationalism? What is rational in science and physics? Well, here we have a definition that opposes materialism, and its physics holds that energy is a concept. Therefore, in science, it is irrational to say that a concept exists, and likewise, it is irrational to say that concepts such as thoughts and ideas exist. Okay, so this is the answer to that. Okay, some people say, hey, Bill, how about your threads? Because some people have raised this issue, and they say, your threads, is there a single thread in the universe? And I say, yes, as far as I know, or as far as the hypothesis goes, there's a single thread. There could be another universe made of a parallel thread, another thread that's, you know, not connected to any of the atoms of our, in other words, every atom in the universe and the ropes that interconnect them under the rope hypothesis, all that's weaved by a single thread. We're saying there's a single thread in the entire universe, and that underlies all matter. Okay, that's the foundation. That's the hypothesis. That's the assumption. Okay, and from there we build these theories based on how the atom works, how gravity works, and so on. But there's a single thread. If we could unwind every atom, if we could unwind every rope in the universe, if we had the power of God to do that, right? Then we would end up with a single thread, closed loop thread. Okay, that's the notion that we have. So people say, okay, you have a single thread. Okay, you can think of it as maybe like a rubber band. Okay, something like this. Okay, that's it. That's what we're saying we have out there. That's how complicated the universe is. Okay, so now you know. And so the people say, okay, you have a single thread, but that single thread has no location because it has no reference, it has no distance with respect to anything outside of it. And that's absolutely correct. Now, we could have this situation here. Let me show you. Okay, we could have a second thread out there. Our universe is the one on the right, the other one's the one on the left. Okay, so there could be a universe out there with all the atoms made up by one thread, and we have our universe with all the atoms and ropes made by our thread, right? There could be a difference in the speed of light because maybe there's more matter over there. Maybe the speed of light may be a function in the ultimately of how long the thread is, and maybe they have a different length of this thread, and so they might have a different speed of light over there. But certainly we would not capture any of the light from that universe because no atom in that universe is connected through electromagnetic threads to any of the atoms in our universe. The only way we can see or touch is through atoms. In other words, through atoms, through the rope, to atom, to another rope, and so on. If none of the atoms in that universe are connected to the ones in our universe, we have no connection to that universe. Now, meanwhile, does our universe exist? We have to follow the definition. Whenever in trouble, whenever you don't know, whenever you have, a blank in your mind, just follow the definition. People don't understand that. They give lip service to the definition. They say, oh, how about this and how about that? Follow the definition. If you follow the definition, I promise you that you will not get hurt. Okay? Just follow the definition. What is the definition? It says that you need an object and you need location. What is location? Set of distances. Here we have distance between those two threads. Therefore, both of those threads exist by definition, scientific definition, not the one of ordinary speech, not the notion of ordinary speech. They exist by definition. You have objects and you have distance. Okay? So far so good? Okay. Now, what happens if we have this situation? Okay, now in this case, we have only a single thread. Now we don't have that other thread to have distance with respect to it, okay? So now we seem to be in a lot of trouble because, people say, well, hold it. Our thread, it's the only thread in the universe, right? Space and thread, that's all we have. And it turns out that this thread makes up everything that exists. And what are you telling me? That everything that exists is based on something that doesn't exist? Is that what you're saying? So and the issue here is, again, people are reverting to ordinary speech. That's the whole problem here. The whole problem is people are thinking again. They're using language of ordinary speech. They're thinking in see, touch again. And they're saying, hold it. We can see and touch everything in our universe that exists. And you're saying this one we can't see or touch. It has no distance, so it doesn't exist. And it makes up everything that exists. Yes, you have to go by the definition. Just go by the definition, and I promise not to hurt you. Just go by the definition. The definition says that it has to be an object, okay? It's got to have distance. If it doesn't have distance with respect to another thread, another universe, then it doesn't exist by definition, pursuant to the definition, okay? So it is a meaningless, it's a trivial thing in physics because what we use in physics every day are atoms. And we are saying this atom exists because it has distance with respect to this other atom. Okay? And we can go around with everything that is out there, all the atoms. You can even say the rope exists because there's a distance between ropes, even though we don't measure between ropes, we measure between atoms. And so we have the notion that distance is only between atoms. So the distance between atoms is essentially the length of the rope. And we do not think in terms of, oh, the distance between two energies, which is what people imagine light to be. What kind of answer is that? Saying that you have a distance between two energies. Nobody would talk like that. And the same thing here. Here we have a distance, a separation between ropes. So it does have existence in that sense. But we never think of energy, which is what people think the rope is, in terms of existence, in terms of distance, okay? In terms of location. That's the problem. But whenever people say, oh, but the thread doesn't exist because it's a single thread and there's no distance to any other thread outside of it, yeah, it's a trivial issue. Just follow the definition and you can safely say that the single thread that makes up all the matter in the universe, that thread doesn't exist. That does not mean, that does not entail that the atoms of which that are made of that thread do not exist. Okay? And I hope someone understood that out there. Okay? Okay, so let's move on here to the science critic that we had. A fellow came over and he criticized the scientific method, and we're probably going to get to the word existence with him as well eventually. But this time around, he talked about something else. He talked about, what is it, the falsifiability and the fact that you need to evidence, some kind of evidence. I guess he was thinking of some kind of experiment or something. Okay, so here, let me turn him on. This is what he said. Let's go slowly here. The questions and issues addressed in this rebuttal include, what does it mean to say that a theory is rational? And does the rationality of an explanation depend on falsifiability and evidence?
Now, when it comes to a rational theory, I'd say that a rational theory would have to be falsifiable and consistent with evidence. If it does not fit any of those two criteria, then it is irrational.
Okay, so he thinks it's all related to falsifiability and evidence. But as we just covered it a minute ago, falsifiability has to do with belief, and evidence has to do with belief. And belief is not science. Belief is religion. So obviously, this poor fellow, he was educated in a monastery somewhere. He learned all this, I guess, from the priests. That's the best I can think of, because why would he talk about falsifiability and evidence? When a prosecutor tries to convince you, he presents, evidence to the juror, to you, if you're the juror, and he's just trying to convince you. So he presents evidence, and if you believe the evidence, you sign up to you vote for his case. None of that has anything to do with science. Legal world is all religion. It's all about belief. How many people have been sentenced erroneously? Among them me. Yeah, a lot of people get sent to the death chamber, and it turns out they were innocent. They found out years later that the guy had nothing to do with it. But the juror believed the theory, despite that later on they found out through further evidence, that the guy was innocent. So it was a fact when he went to prison, and then they found out it was not a fact, that there's a different fact. So we have all these facts, all these beliefs. They're known as beliefs. Okay, so let's look at this fellow. He says falsifiability. Okay, here it is. We look it up. It says falsifiable, able to be proven false. Okay, what is false? Not true. Okay, and what's proved to establish the truth by evidence or argument. And what is true? Well, conformity with fact or reality, not false. What's truth? A verified or indisputable fact. What is fact? Something that actually exists, reality, truth. Reality, the state of or quality of being real. And what is real? It's true. Look it up. It's got to do with truth. And finally, we have evidence, that which tends to prove or disprove, right? To whom? I don't know, maybe to the Pope. Something. Ground for belief. Yes. Proof. So all we did was just go around in circle. All they had was synonym. We don't know what falsifiability means because it's got to do with proving something false, and all those are synonyms. So we have no idea what this poor fellow is talking about. And so I have to believe that, maybe, just maybe, um, this fellow didn't use his brain very much in school or monastery. I don't know where he went. And I don't think he used his CPU very much. I think he used his ROM, his random, his read-only memory. I'm sorry, read-only memory. That's all he's got. Just memorized all this stuff in school. He had no use for his brain apparently. He just sat and warmed the desk and received this, by word of mouth. That's it. He just listened to it, and he never analyzed it on his own. He never criticized. He never attacked it. He just accepted it on the basis of what? Authority. Okay, so this is how these people work. And yeah, what can I say? Again, rationality, here we have it. For those who are interested, what is irrational? Well, treating concepts as objects. That's what rationality is. Rationality has nothing to do, or irrationality has nothing to do with, verifying or falsifying. We don't falsify anything in science. We try not to. It's the other way around. We try to unfalsify things, not falsify them. And we certainly don't use evidence because evidence is just there to convince you. No, irrational means that you're going to move concepts around, such as, time dilation, you're going to dilate time. Ooh, that's scary stuff. And you're going to go with a force, transfer the energy, weigh the mass. Yeah, that's a primary one, the first one there. But then, you're using inconsistent definitions or undefined words, which is just about all the words in mathematics are all undefined. They finally say, well, words, you need more words to define those words, and those words need to be defined as well, so we cannot define any word. That's their answer. It's just circular or infinite, as they said, infinite argument. And so they never define words, and they're satisfied with that. They say, yeah, the buck has to stop somewhere, but it doesn't, and it just goes on and on and on. So we don't define any words, and they have no definition for any of those words. No, look up field. Field is defined as a value at each point in space. And then they say the field moved the charge. Whoa, what do you mean? The field moved the charge like a paddle, No, you can't do that. Charge is a number, 1.6 times 10 to the minus 19 coulombs. Great. That's the value of a charge. And you're going to move this number with this paddle called a field, a bunch of numbers, a bunch of values at each point in space. No, you're not allowed to do that. That's known as irrationality. Okay, so let's move on here to some of the questions. I know, first we got the Moonies. Hold it, forgot the Moonies today. Okay, here it goes. What was the issue with the Moonies? Well, Moonies are people who believe that we did not go to the moon. Okay, and I'm on record. I'm going to say that. I'm going to confess here, right? That after looking at a couple of these videos, they put the seed of doubt in me, or at least made it very interesting to look it up. Doesn't mean I stopped believing that we went to the moon. I just concluded that I cannot answer all the questions that people have brought up. Okay, so I'm on record for that. I can't say that I understand all these issues. Okay, how some of these things were done. Like, you see the guy on the moon jumping around, and I showed that the other day. And you slow it down, and that's a normal hop, like that you could do here on Earth with wires, so the guy jumps. In fact, in that case, he didn't even need wires. I think you could do that and just slow down the movie, which is what I did. I just slowed it down by 50%, and suddenly you're on the moon. You're jumping very slowly. So that you didn't even need wires for that. And so you say, well, could have that been done in a studio? And my answer is yes, without any doubts about it. I have no reservations about that. It could have been done in a studio. Now, was that one done in a studio, or did this guy jump on the moon? Because after all, think about it. If he's going to be on the moon, he's going to jump around. That's also what it's going to look like. So if they show you the real thing and the fake one, how are you supposed to tell the difference? Okay, keep that in mind as well. But what's my argument? My argument is that in fact, let me show you that down here, because a guy raised that issue, okay, and he said the following. He said, here the topic of discussion is whether the Apollo missions are fake or whether man has ever set foot on the moon. Okay, what does the satellite or the probe or the rover, meaning the ISS, right? I guess he was referring to that, have to do with it? Did Armstrong set foot on the moon or not? Okay, so because I brought the issue of the ISS, and so this is what I've got to answer him. Okay, here it is. Okay, it's the levels of incredulity that we find out there among Moonies. Okay, this is a big problem because you have Moonies who say that we didn't go to the moon. Others say that humans can't even pass the Van Allen belts. Others say probes never went to the moon or to any of the planets like Mercury or Venus or Mars. And others say that they never even went into outer space. They didn't even reach what is known as the low Earth orbit. Some believe we never even went to low Earth orbit. Okay, and some don't even believe that there are satellites out there. And I know a lot of flat earthers are on that wave because of course, if you can show that you have satellites, you could conceivably take a picture from the satellite of the Earth and show that it's a sphere. And so they have to deny that there are even satellites out there. And others believe the ISS is fake. And why do I pick on the ISS? Well, because the ISS is something anyone can verify with a pair of binoculars or with a telescope. That's why I chose the ISS. I mean, forget about all these other people going to the moon in 1969. If these people don't believe the ISS is out there right now when they can focus with their binoculars, you're never going to convince them about man going to the moon. So we have to forget about man to the moon. We've got a bigger fire here raging, and that's that these people don't believe in the ISS. And then there's others who believe that the ISS is out there, but there are no humans in the ISS. They say that's the part that's fake, all the zero gravity stuff. Okay, and so that's why I say if we can't settle the ISS, which can be verified by telescope binoculars today, it is a waste of warp space-time to discuss the moon landings. Okay, so that's my take on this. Okay, so what do some of these people say? Okay, here's one fellow. He says about gravity in low Earth orbit. He says, few things you did not consider. Okay, gravity is at 250 miles above the Earth is only 5% less. So it's far from close to zero gravity. And he's right. Surface of the Earth, you get 9.8 meters per second square. If you go to low Earth orbit, approximately 250 miles or 400 kilometers thereabouts, you get 9 meters per second square acceleration. So not much difference. From 9 to 9.8, you don't have much difference. What's the catch? What's the difference? Well, more or less what you see in those airplanes that have zero gravity for about 20 seconds because they go on a parabola. Okay, and here you see it. The pull of gravity is in low Earth orbit is only slightly less than on the Earth's surface. True. This is because the distance to the LEO, right, from the Earth's surface is much less than the Earth's radius. Okay. However, an object in orbit is, by definition, in free fall. Remember Einstein and his elevator falling? The man would not know if he's going up or down or whatever. Since there is no force holding it up. That's the situation up there. Okay. As a result, objects in orbit, including people, experience a sense of weightlessness. There you have the link. Okay, so the fact that the gravity is not that much different at 250 miles from the surface of the Earth does not negate that they're going to be floating around. They're floating around for a different reason. Okay, and there you have it. Okay, another fellow says, okay, like some of these notions that these people raised. Fellow says the speed of the ISS travel is 17 kilometers or 17,000 miles per hour. Okay, way too fast for an amateur video you showed. And at 250 miles above the Earth, it is obstructed by over 700 miles of Earth curvature to have direct line of sight to the sun. Well, at least the guy's not a flat earther. Okay, so how is it illuminated? Most likely the video is from some high altitude balloon. And again, let's show the video, okay? I don't know what these people have in their heads. Here it is. The guy is filming through his telescope. Okay, you might, well, this was done in a studio, right? There's the guy. He's filming himself from behind, how he's filming the ISS. He takes a picture of it. You don't have to believe him. You can get your own set of binoculars and prove to yourself, convince yourself that there is a monster out orbiting the Earth. Okay. Now, if you're like Galileo, the cardinals of Galileo who refused to look through his telescope at the Galilean moons, Io and so on. If you refuse to look, well, I can't help you. This guy is filming, the ISS from the ground. I think he's here in Germany. And he's filming it. So, you don't have to believe him, but go get your binoculars if you're going to say that he faked it, that he did it in a studio, he did it with a hot air balloon or whatever. I mean, come on. How far are these people going to take this? That's the question. And these are the people who destroy really the conversation because they're so extreme in their thoughts that you can't even have a conversation with them. Again, it's known as a fact. It's a fact. And some people don't believe those facts. There you have it. Some people don't believe the ISS. You show them the ISS through the telescope, through your binoculars. You take them to the ISS and they still don't believe. I don't believe that fact. It's not a fact. No, you took me to Disneyland. Yeah, okay. Okay, the trick is done by performing a parabolic flight path. The craft falls with the people and things inside falling too. So he thinks that this, I guess, here's an example, right? Sorry. Give me a second here. I'll show you some zero gravity here. Okay, here it is. Muller. And you can see he's flying around. And why? Because he went on this airplane in France that takes people for a ride, tourist ride. It's zero gravity for 20 seconds approximately, and then they all fall down. Okay, so this is what it is. It's not a trick. This is not done in a studio. This is the real thing, folks. And should we say that this was done in a studio too, that they took the trouble? I mean, everything is fake today, right? So that probably was done in a studio. And yeah, this is what people believe, that, the ISS, the things that they do in there going from one chamber to another, that's all done in a studio with wires. They took all this trouble to do that. I mean, I think it's much easier, way easier to do it on the ISS than it would be in Hollywood. Okay, so someone says the following. He criticizes the water drop. Here it goes. Says there are plenty of examples of the kinds of motion and activity such as drinking a glob of water or realistic floating objects that you have claimed couldn't be faked in a studio found in movies and TV shows. Okay, he said proof: drinking a floating water globule in a similar manner can be seen on the TV show The Expanse. And he says, look up The Expanse, zero gravity time killing. So I did look it up, and this is what you see in that movie, the specific strip of film where the guy drinks a drop of water that's floating in air. Okay, and here he is. Okay, he throws that I guess his pop bottle, pop can, turns around. Okay, I did it in fast motion there. And here he swallows the drops of water as they come into his mouth. But you can see the drops of water are really going straight. Okay? And so people confuse things and they say, okay, that can be done in a studio. This can be done in a studio, the guy rolling around with a belt tied to a wire. But this, you can see the drops of water just floating by straight. He doesn't play around with them. Compare that now with this, the ISS, what is it, astronaut, the lady who swallowed the water. Compare this against this now. This is a lot different. I'm not sure Hollywood can do this. Okay, not in a studio. Not that neat, not that clear. Okay, and you can see that she's fumbling with that water drop like anything. You're saying, how did she do that in a studio? That's the one I want you to show me. This other fellow, he's just got drops of water floating past him. Here you see it again. Let me show you one more time. Okay, he's just got the water drops just floating around. You know, that can be done in a studio, no problem with that. But this is something different. This is, what did they do? They held that water droplet with a string. Is that how they did it? And so again, people are going to extremes to try to argue their case against the ISS. I mean, I think it would be much easier for them to do it in the ISS than what you see, than to do it in Hollywood. That's my 5 cents worth on that. What can I tell you? These people, I think, are going out of their way. We do have an ISS. In order to take it up there, there had to be some intermediate steps. There had to be many rockets sent with all these probes out there before we could build an ISS out there in space. And if we built that thing up there, so we just have that, like this other fellow said, tin can or tuna can orbiting the Earth. What can I tell you? It's empty. There's nothing in there. They just put this tin can up there and everybody just watches it just to fool the entire Earth. My God, these people are really taking it very far. And they're really flat earthers. That's what they are. Okay, another fellow says, look up NASA engineer Kelly Smith videos on YouTube who admits we can't get through the deadly Van Allen belts today. Well, I did look that fellow up. I didn't find he had a couple videos. I watched a couple of them and then I finished. I didn't look for more. First of all, he didn't come across as a very reliable fellow for me. He was there primarily to boast that he got a job at NASA and eat your heart out, that sort of thing. He's just putting a show where he's collecting money to say, hey, I got a job at NASA and you don't. That's all it was. And then he talked about a lot of his, how he got his master's degree and so on. Quite boring, the whole thing. I couldn't find the specific piece where he says about the Van Allen belt. So I would need a link to that video to find out what he's talking about. But again, he didn't come across as very reliable. And, a lot of the stuff he said was just, he's a newbie. He doesn't know anything. He's supposedly an engineer, but he's just starting out. So yeah, I was by no means convinced by that fellow. Okay, point someone that knows a little more, maybe, that can express himself a lot better than this fellow. Okay, let's go now, yes, with the questions. Okay, fellow says, he says, plasma. Could you explain why you regard plasma as a concept and not an object? Or could you point me to somewhere you've explained it previously? I explained it several times, in fact, but no problem. Here it is. I won't go through all of that. Just answer his question. Why is plasma an object and a concept and not an object? There it is. And it is. Plasma is defined as ionized. Okay? That's what plasma is. Plasma is ionized. Now, ionized is not a physical object. Okay? Ionized is, if you say I ionize something, you use a verb. But as a qualifier, it's an adverb. And so there's no physical object called ionized. Okay? That's the issue. And don't put any more words in there. That's the definition. Ionized. You got to focus on that word. If you put more words, all you're doing is getting confused. Okay? Plasma is equal to ionized, and ionized is not a physical object. Now, some people define plasma even worse. They say it's the fourth state of matter. Well, hopefully, if plasma is the fourth state of matter, there's no physical standalone object called fourth state of matter. So again, it's people who don't pay attention to definitions, like the electric universe, that likes to use this word plasma. There is no physical object called ionized, and there is no physical object, standalone object called state of matter. Okay. In fact, this is very easily seen, and you can see it there in the little pictures on the right. Gas is a physical object, okay, because you don't have to have gas moving in order for it to be a physical object. Plasma needs to move. You need to have a movie to watch plasma. You can't see plasma in a photograph. What you're seeing there is arrows. What do those arrows represent? Motion. Okay? So you're seeing a movie inside a picture. That's what they illustrated there. And unless you understand that, it means you don't have the mental capacity to be in physics. Okay? Those arrows are motion. You cannot have plasma in a picture. They illustrated with these arrows just to give you the idea that those atoms and electrons are moving. And that's what plasma is. Plasma means ionized. That's what it means. And if you think ionized is a standalone object, well, God have mercy on your soul. Okay. Okay, another fellow says, an accurate estimate of how many atoms are in the known universe is a minimum of 10 to the 78th power and a maximum of 10 to the 82nd power, blah, 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 blah. Okay, how many ropes would that be physically connecting atom to all other atoms? Bazillion, gazillion, or a whole bunch probably, is an absolutely unacceptable answer as an engineer. Okay, so here's my answer to this gentleman. And the first thing is that, this is not a question of science, not a question of physics. As he said, it's a question for an engineer, maybe, maybe a mathematician, not a scientist, not a physicist. Okay, we don't do math in science. Okay, and besides, an estimate is not accurate. Okay, so it's, if you're going to talk about an accurate estimate, you have already an oxymoron there. Okay? But an engineer is unconcerned with atoms in the universe. That's not the job of an engineer. I know I was an engineer for many years, and we didn't count atoms. Of course, that was not my engineering specialty, but any engineers don't count atoms out there in the universe. That's not their job. Okay, so he's asking a question of engineering to a physicist. So he's in the wrong ship. Engineering has to do with technology. Physicists has to do with science. Okay, and technology and science are two different fields, two different disciplines. One has nothing at all to do with the other. Technology, they develop gadgets by trial and error. Science, we explain mechanisms. Nothing to do one with the other. Physicist is not interested in how much at all. And engineer is a guy who designs and builds gadgets. That's all it is. So, when all these people give these numbers out and they want to play around with numbers, they're in the wrong field. I don't know what they're doing in science. I guess they missed the wrong door. Down the hall, bud. Go down the hall, you'll find engineering over there, okay? Technology, R&D. Okay, another fellow, I think it's the same fellow, says, based on knowing the size of the electron expressed in Planck length, what diameter is the electric side of this intertwined rope? The diameter of both sections intertwined, the diameter of the fundamental element thread comprising them. Well, again, fellows are asking questions that are not part of science, and not part of physics. Here it is. This is not a question of physics. Physics is not interested in how much. Physics deals with explanations of causes and mechanisms, okay? Types of questions that a physicist deals with is what caused the pen to fall to the ground, not how many atoms does the pen have. Okay, estimate again not equal to accurate. So to say some accurate estimate is wrong. The bread and butter of physics is the object. Okay, not the numbers. We don't deal with numbers. We deal with objects. Okay, mechanisms are done with objects. causes are done with objects. So again, I don't know why these people even come to a physics site if they're going to ask questions of engineering or technology, which are unrelated to this channel. We have nothing to do with those. It's like asking about, tourism here. We don't do tourism here. I do some tourism every now and then, but I don't talk about tourism. So if you come say, Bill, how do you travel to China? Sorry, take the next American Airlines flight or whatever. Okay, here's another fellow. He says, forget the rope hypothesis. It's simply physically impossible. Whoa, physically impossible. Okay, let's answer him. Unsubstantiated opinion. That's what he's doing. He just used words that he doesn't even understand, okay? And physical is not equal to see touch. So maybe that's what he's got rolling through his bean brain, okay? Physical is equal to object, to a thing, okay? What is a thing? Is it that which you can see and touch? No, it's that which has shape. The rope hypothesis, the electromagnetic rope, has shape. It cannot be seen or touched. So I don't know why he says it's simply physically impossible when physically means object. Okay, it is an object, so what's impossible about it? Until he can, make sense of his statement, all we have is unsubstantiated opinion. And again, the electromagnetic rope is invisible and tangible, and it is a physical object. Therefore, I don't know what he means by it's simply physically impossible. Can't help you, bud, until you clarify why it's physically impossible. Okay, you gotta specify that. Okay, another fellow says, being able to see nanoparticles and atoms since the 1980s via transmission electron microscopes, scanning tunneling microscopes, and atomic force microscopes. Right. How and why would the visible tangible have to be made of invisible intangible? Well, the first thing I have to believe this fellow is from Mars or from some other planet. I mean, he says being able to see nanoparticles and atoms since the 1980s. That's interesting. I think this proves that we do have aliens that have invaded the Earth. Okay. Well, here's my answer. It's an irrational question because the questions of purpose. He's talking about there how and why would the visible intangible have to be made of invisible intangible. Well, it's a question of purpose. He's talking about why in the sense of purpose, not in the sense of causes. Okay, purpose and reasons, that's philosophy. And the answer to that is always the same, because God made it that way. No human has ever seen an atom, not a human. In fact, the atom today is illustrated by mathematicians here on Earth. That's why we should notify this alien here, this ET, that this is the model we have today from quantum mechanics, and that's the one you see down there. You have the three quarks that form a ball known as a proton, and then you have the electron bead which goes around it. This is the atom they use to explain electricity. This is the atom they use to explain ionization. This is the atom they use to explain quantum jump. And so this is the atom we have because we've never seen an atom. And this fellow says that since the 1980s, they have seen nanoparticles and atoms. So I guess it must have been on his planet. I wish he could draw it for us so that we knew or point to some link in his planet that we could see what an atom looks like. We've never seen one here on Earth, at least. So all I can ask him is to please illustrate it, put a link to your planet so that we can see what an atom looks like. We absolutely want to see what an atom looks like, okay? And when I say an atom, I mean, like, I want to see what the electron looks like. Is it an orbiting bead, like going around like the hydrogen atom? That's the type of thing we're looking for, right? And no, we've never seen an atom. They've taken bird's eye pictures of big atoms, and again, it's bird's eye. And the funny thing is, they all look like this, like a ball. And why would it look like a ball if it's an orbiting bead? you would think it would look more like a little bead rolling around a smaller ball or something like that. That's not what you observe. When they take pictures, it's all balls from a bird's eye perspective again. That's why we have not seen inside the atom. We don't know what the proton looks like, for example. Okay, and if you can't see the proton, you can't see the electron. Some people boast that they've been able to film the electron and show some wavy thing there. And of course, that's nonsense because the electron is said to be point particle. It's got no dimensions, no size. So you figure it out. Okay, but let's answer this fellow's question anyways, okay? Because there is an element there. He asks, how is it that intangibility produces tangibility? How is it that invisibility produces visibility? And the issue there is that you cannot see one atom, but you can see the chair and you can see a table. And the chair and the table are made of many atoms. But again, you cannot see one atom. And you want proof of that? Those people who want evidence and a little more than belief, proof, knowledge, or whatever it's called, you can't see the air. The air is made out of atoms. Period. We're done. See how easy it was? We can't see the air. It's made of gazillions of atoms floating around here, and we can't see any of them. And so, no, we cannot see all objects. We cannot see the atoms, the oxygen atoms. We cannot see the oxygen molecules, O2, right? And plus the other garbage, nitrogen, whatever is in the air, right? And so we cannot see these molecules, let alone the atoms. And so this takes us to how Mother Nature does this, how she produces tangibility from intangibility, how she produces visibility from invisibility. Okay, here it is. Okay, the way we do it is all objects that we can see or touch in everyday experience are made of many atoms. We would not see a chair if it were made of one atom. The key is aggregation. We cannot see or touch the threads that comprise the electromagnetic rope. You can prove this to yourself by, get a spoon like I did earlier, right? Let me show you here. Give me a second. Okay. And so here we have a spoon. Okay. You cannot see the things that are connecting it to the earth. See or touch. I mean, if you can, let me know, but I can't see or touch them. Okay. I'm touching the air, but I don't see the air, and I can't touch whatever is holding the spoon prisoner to the earth. So the only reason the spoon doesn't fall is because I'm holding it up. I'm preventing its fall. I'm stronger than whatever's pulling on it. But as soon as I let go of it, something pulls on it. And yes, gravity is a pull force, to use that word, and magnetism is a pull force. You can prove this to yourself also. Evidence, proof, fact, just by taking two magnets, and you'll feel that the tug is from the inside. Okay, you'll see that. Nothing's pushing on your hand. Something is tugging from the inside. And there's something there that you cannot see or touch. The issue is aggregation. When you put a lot of these threads together, like, when you build a ball known as an electron, which encapsulates the proton star, that's when you can start talking about see and touch. Not yet with an electron sphere, meaning the atom. You need several atoms for us to see it, to get that frequency. And yes, when you have many atoms, now you can see the thing. You can see the chair, the table, whatever. It's all aggregation, okay? So religious people have invented spirits and angels as mediators to explain gravity and magnetism. The idiots of math, right, instead use mathematical concepts such as field, wave, energy, mass, and other nonsense. Okay, another question here. A fellow says, I was answering this fellow as well. Okay, the electromagnetic rope forks out at the boundary of the electron shell, and the electron shell is weaved by countless threads. Okay, it is this aggregation of threads that confers the nascent emergent property of see and touch to the atom. And still, we need many atoms to have the ability to see, touch the chair. We can't see the air in spite of this aggregation of atoms. It is see touch which has fooled the theorists. throughout the ages. Okay, and here you have the picture of what I'm talking about, a picture of our atom. Okay, you have a two-dimensional one there and a three-dimensional one there. Thanks to Dave and Dan for that. Okay, and and there you see how it's built. You have all these ropes converging upon our atom, and one rope turns into the electron, which is an electron membrane. It's a like a balloon that encapsulates the proton star, which is what you see in the center. So the yellow one is a star, that's the proton, and one that encapsulated is the the electron. And yeah, you have gazillions of atoms converging upon that atom, and that's what builds it. And so our atom is connected to every atom in the universe. And that scares a lot of people because they say, well, how can the numbers, how do you account for the numbers? And that's what's troubling them. They said, so many. Well, I hate to tell them, first of all, that in just a little cubic centimeter of what I have here, air, there's thousands and thousands of atoms. And you say, how can that possibly be? Just a little bit? Yeah. The atom is so small that you have thousands, hundreds of thousands in a cubic centimeter of air. And you say, how can that possibly be? I can't even see it with there being hundreds of thousands in this region here. Yeah. And you can't see them. And so you can't see one atom. But you can imagine if you build up a lot of these atoms, now that you've built a surface, the electron surface, which is a globular type of surface. It's a balloon. It's a encapsulating membrane. Okay. Now you can start. You can't see that yet. Okay, you can't see that yet. But what you have is when you have many of those, at some point this aggregation is what builds up, and that's what builds see and touch, visibility, tangibility. Okay, so that's the way it works. It's through aggregation. That's how intangibility becomes tangible, visibility becomes visible, invisibility becomes visible. Okay, fellow says, time dilation isn't just theoretical. Global positioning satellites have to take it into effect to provide accurate readings to users here on Earth. Theoretical has to do with science, has nothing to do with time dilation. Time dilation is not theoretical, especially if it's got to do with what? With users. Readings, users, that's got to do with technology. So to say theoretical and it's got to do with this users, no, you've got a contradiction there. Okay? No, it's got nothing to do with it. And then he said, time passes more slowly, close to a massive object. Whoa, it's so scary when time passes by, It's really scary. It's a concept that's moving. So time passes. I want whatever he's got, bartender. Does a lot of good to him. And then he says, a clock on Earth's surface ticks at a slower rate relative to one on a satellite in orbit. Absolutely not. Whoever told you that? Einstein? I mean, you're not going to believe Einstein, Here, I'll show you Bill's clock, okay? We're going to use Bill's clock here, okay? This is Bill Gates' hourglass dilation, okay? And the clock that's closer to the center of the Earth is going faster, and the guy on the outside is going slower. So I'm not sure what problem this fellow has in understanding this. Obviously, clocks closer to the center of the Earth go faster because of gravity, and those that are farther away go slower. We're done. I mean, I'm not sure where he got this notion that it's the other way around. Okay, so yeah, we just have to use the proper gravitational clocks, and yes, an hourglass is a gravitational clock, so it's the best clock to relate time with gravity. Okay, another fellow says, it is amazing that time passes more slowly. Another guy that has time pass. I wonder what these guys drink. I mean, time passes. For me, time never passes. Okay, on Earth, and that time speeds up on the satellite clock. How does time or the speed of light cause all the clocks on Earth to slow down? My poor God, this poor fellow. Where do these people get all this stuff? Okay, here's the answer. Okay, you had better have first a physical entity if you're going to talk about uh, affecting something else. There is no action at a distance, much less from a concept such as time. You have to talk about clocks, not time. Okay, and that's where people get confused because time does not belong to physics. Clocks belong to physics. And hopefully, if that clock runs faster or slower out there in space compared to one down here on Earth, hopefully it's got to do with some connection with the Earth, physical connection. Because otherwise, you're going to be doing black magic. You're going to say that there's nothing between the clock and the Earth, and yet the Earth somehow affects that clock. How does it affect it? By magic, black magic? What are you going to use? The word field? Are you going to use the word energy? What concept are you going to use? No, you have to use a physical object. And there we have a physical object. We're saying that one atom of the clock is connected to every atom on Earth. That's just one atom of the clock. Every atom of that clock is connected to every atom of the Earth. And you say, well, Bill, where in the world did you get this? Well, let's just put some uh, evidence, some proof, some authority, especially. Here's authority. Here's Richard Muller, UC Berkeley. So, for example, if you have the Earth here, there's a big mass here, and you have you with your little mass here. Every atom on the Earth is what? Pulling on every atom of you. You're also pulling on it. The amazing thing about gravity is that it goes right through things. Okay? So there you have your explanation of why every atom of the clock is connected to every atom on Earth, and every atom of the Earth is connected to every atom of that clock. That's the only way you can explain why the Earth affects the clock. Okay? Otherwise, you're using black magic. You're saying that it does so by remote control, nothing in between, and it turns out that this Earth, whatever Earth does, is affecting that clock. The Earth is affecting the moon, the sun is affecting the Earth, and everything's done by remote control. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Even suntan is done with physical object, the rope. That's it drills. It's drilling a hole through the torsion on the atoms. It's torquing them. That's what it's doing. Otherwise, if there were no connection between the sun and your body, why would you get a suntan? Waves, frequency, maybe amplitude. I don't know. You tell me. Why would you get a suntan? What's stimulating your atoms in your body if not a physical entity that is in contact with your body? The ropes. Okay, so here we have another fellow says just memorizing what you read will not help you get a grade. Okay, we talked about studying, and I'm saying that a lot of people, the way we all learn, even from being babies, we learn by rote. We just repeat what our elders fed us. And when we go to high school and college, we read books written by people who came before us. Okay, and so they come up and they discovered things, certain patterns in nature. They put them in books. You read the book and you learn what this guy taught you. So it's all done by rote. And this guy protesting, he says, "Well, that's not the way you learn." Yeah, I agree. That's the way you memorize. Okay. And so he says you have to do experiments, do papers, and many other things to show that you understood what you read and are able to use the knowledge and to do experiments. Now, experiments are technology. It has nothing to do with physics, with understanding like, science. Based on the knowledge, again, belief. Okay, knowledge is belief. To see if it's correct or wrong. That's an opinion. We don't care about opinions. Yes, we first had to learn and memorize the basic. Thank you. In chemistry, for example, right? But that was only a small portion. Oh, small portion. I thought it was 100%. After that, we had to do experiments to see if what is predicted is correct. Again, predicted, correct, religion. No, it's got nothing to do with prediction. We're talking about understanding. Did you understand? Can you explain? And again, if you're just regurgitating what you read in the book, and the fact that you can regurgitate it well, that's not studying. It's not rationalizing something. when you rationalize something, you do it on your own. You don't do it because you read a book. You take and you get all the things that you read and you put them like together in your mind and you create your own thoughts. That's the way. Then we know you're working your brain out there. It means you have the material to be a scientist. But if you just got a PhD because you warmed a desk for 10 years and you can spit out what they fed you, especially your advisor, you had better be able to. Otherwise, you don't get your PhD, right? If you can just regurgitate what you learn by rote, that's not science, and certainly that's not studying. That's not, what is that? That's just memory. Again, no CPU, just ROM. Just memorizing things won't do you any good in science, at least in Germany. Well, I'm in Germany, and the same garbage is here that's all around the world. Okay, so to say that there's something different in Germany than in every country in the world, you'll have to prove that to me. Okay. Okay, fellow says again with facts. Like all these Christians out there who believe the earth and the whole universe is just 6,000 years old, facts would make their belief wrong, and that they can't accept. So facts are the enemy of belief. And again, he doesn't understand. He can come up with all the evidence, all the proof, all the experiments, whatever he brings, and the guy on the other side says, "No, I don't believe in your facts," and he just dies saying, "I don't believe in your facts, no matter what." And what's this guy going to do? Kill him? So facts are belief, okay? And so if you do a measurement and got a different result than me, then we can talk about where the difference comes from. Yeah, and if we don't agree, then we don't have a fact. And you say, but look, and here, and look through the telescope, you'll see the moons of Jupiter. And I'll say, I don't want to look through your stupid telescope. I don't believe there are any moons in Jupiter. Period. What are you going to do? You say, no, but it's a fact. Yeah, I don't want to believe. And so, no, he doesn't understand. Facts are belief. We don't have facts in science. We have statements of the fact. Fact is what Mother Nature has. She knows what happened exactly. We can only speculate and based on that, make statements of the fact according to what we think really happened. Okay, your rope hypothesis is conceptual. Uh-oh. You do realize there is an incalculable, possibly infinite number of atoms in the universe. My God, infinite. How could idiocy, that's what we see here. How could every single atom fit that infinite number of threads? Infinite, okay. That's just physically impossible, right? Physically, what are these words that this poor fellow is using? Okay, so here we have it. First, we have to define what concept is. He didn't define it. He said your rope hypothesis is conceptual. No, it's physical. Rope is physical, not conceptual. But you have to define these words in order to be able to use them consistently in a conversation. He hasn't done that, so we don't know what he's talking about. Okay, what is infinite? Well, infinite is the word used by idiots. Okay, idiots use the word infinite. It means I don't want to answer the question. That's what infinite means. All objects are finite. Adjective infinite can only be used in the context of objects. Adjective definite, right? Infinite, you can't use the word infinite object because there is no such thing as a contradiction in terms. Object is something that has shape. It's finite, and therefore all objects are finite. There's nothing infinite. Now, counting is not finite or infinite. Counting is incessant or eternal or whatever. You use an adverb to qualify verbs, okay? Incessant is not an adjective, only in ordinary speech. In physics, incessant is an adjective. It can only qualify a verb. It cannot qualify an object. You cannot say the table is incessant unless you're talking about the motion of the table, okay? So again, only for verbs. Counting atoms, that's mathematics. And the electromagnetic ropes superimpose. So you can put as many ropes as you want, all one on top of the other, no problem. Okay? And the question there is always, why don't you ask this question in quantum mechanics? Quantum mechanics tells you that particles superimpose. Why don't you take the question up with them? okay? Because apparently it's allowed in quantum, but you don't want it allowed in the rope model. And then the ear ropes are invisible and intangible. Since they don't have the ability to touch, there's no problem in one rope superimposing upon another, okay? Or crossing another. So they don't see or touch. You can't see or touch the rope. So there's no tangibility or visibility between rope and you and rope. Okay? Just connection. Okay, fellow says a hypothesis is an assumption. Correct. You are postulating entities, phenomena, properties, relations. Okay, yeah. Essentially, we say that a hypothesis is the objects, the definitions, and the initial scene or statement of the facts, which is essentially what he put in those words there. But then he says, special relativity versus Lorentz ether theory. Theory? Those are not theories, those are descriptions. Different entities and mechanisms are proposed in both theories. Again, not theories. And then he does say later on, he says, despite these differences, they use the exact same models to describe. You got it. All they are is descriptions. Descriptions are not theories. Explanations are theories. And explanations have nothing at all to do with descriptions. Okay, and so he says a collection of theories, models, hypotheses that cannot be compared against potential conflicting observations is rather useless. You have similar falsifiable models, but different theories about the mechanisms in question. And again, all these people think it's about observing and falsifying. Those terms are unscientific. Never use them again, at least in this channel. Okay, you're just making a fool of yourself. And what? An idiot? You got big ideas. So yeah, what can I say? Okay, another fellow says gravity is as centripetal force, and he mentions Social Chandrasekhar. Okay, and I went there and I looked at his paper. It says the Earth's gravity can be viewed as the centripetal force resulting from what? Coupling of its rotational and orbital motions. That's not an explanation. Okay, and he says these motions were presumably set in train in the early universe. Universe had no beginning. There was no early universe. The universe has always been late. Okay, it's always been there. Okay, so we have the early universe and we have no explanation for gravity. But these people say, oh, but it's a centripetal force. What has he said? What is that? That's nonsense. That's what it's called. We need a mechanism. Why is it a centripetal force? What causes it to be a centripetal force? That's the question we're seeking for 2,500 years now. Not a single mathematician on earth can answer the question. And the last question here, we say everyone is wrong about force equals mass times acceleration. It isn't Newton's, it's Euler's. Okay, I kind of agree. Newton got a lot of credit for a lot of stuff that he didn't do. Okay, and part of that was because there was a big debate in the 16th century, even pouring into the early 17th century, especially between the Newton on one hand and several people, on the continent, on the European continent, and they were fighting for different things that each one claimed to have discovered, invented, or whatever. And I think when you look at Principia, you don't find a lot of stuff that he's being credited for. And among those, the three laws of motion. Those are not Newton's. Okay, Rene Descartes and Galileo already were aware of those laws of motion. Not all of them, not force equals mass times acceleration, the number two, but the first and the third, those were already around. So Newton did not discover those, but he's credited and he's given the three laws of motion of Newton. And a lot has to do with people who stood up for him in England and fought these debates between the continent and England, and made him famous beyond his own credits. Someone who hated his guts because said he plagiarized him several times was Robert Hooke. When Robert Hooke died, Newton hated him so much that he destroyed everything that Robert Hooke had left at the what is it, the Royal Society. And so we don't even have a picture of Robert Hooke today because Newton, in his anger, destroyed it.